If you grew up watching 80s action flicks, chances are you'll probably have seen Bloodsport, which is a martial arts film starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Although not really Oscar-worthy, this movie is definitely one of my childhood favorites. I never knew that the movie spawned a sequel called Bloodsport II: The Next Kumite, and the fact that I was never aware of its existence kinda warned me that this one would be nowhere near as good as the original. So let's take a look at Bloodsport II: The Next Kumite and figure out why it was deemed direct-to-video material. Well, for starters, the opening scene set off some alarm bells. In the original, you had this nice sequence of seeing the fighters prepare for the tournament in various ways. The sequel begins with a frame story in which Sun, played by James Hong, teaches his students how bad people can redeem themselves and become good. Now this is pointless and serves no purpose other than to pad the movie's length. So, Sun tells the story of Alex Cardo, played by Daniel Bernhardt, an actor who probably was discovered at a Van Damme lookalike contest. Alex steals a sword from a character called James Lung, oh screw it, I'll just call him Mr. Miyagi, but gets double-crossed by partners in crime and he ends up in prison. Upon his arrival, Alex defends an old man against an angry prison mob, proving that he is in fact a good Samaritan. Soon, the mentor character in this movie notices this act of chivalry and later on saves Alex from the wrath of the mob leader. Honestly, am I the only one who has trouble believing that this scrawny man can hold his own in a fight? But wait, there's an explanation for this.
The Iron Hand is a way of being.
I don't understand.
Watch. No need to touch. To achieve the Iron Hand, one must live it, be it, attain a certain inner peace and focus.
Again, a major downer for me. I was willing to suspend my disbelief for the famous dim mock scene in the first movie, but this Iron Hand bullshit just doesn't fly with me. He might as well be teaching him how to perform Hadoukens. Anyway, Alex clearly has some fighting prowess. But he can't master the Iron Hand until he gets thrown in solitary for a murder committed by this prison guard, the movie's villain. Want to take a guess what his name is?
The guards respect me. Even the big one, the demon.
Yeah, that's right, Demon. I'm surprised they didn't give the guy horns. As if the name didn't give it away enough, most shots of him where he isn't fighting have to emphasize his diabolical nature. So you'll see him tilting his head backwards, so there's a focus on his jawline, accompanied by an evil glare, or he'll be flexing his muscles while grinning like a madman. In solitary, Alex finally opens his mind for the spiritual, and this enables him to learn the Iron Hand, blah 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 blah. The spiritual mumbo-jumbo in this movie really doesn't do it for me. Sun tells Alex of the Kumite, and even though their bond is nowhere near as close as that between Dukes and Tanaka in the first movie, Alex wants to win the Kumite to honor his mentor. But because he's still in prison, the writers have to use a predictable plot device to get him out. So Alex gets released thanks to Mr. Miyagi, who wants him to retrieve the stolen sword. Alex tries to enter the Kumite, but he's refused because he lacks an invitation. Luckily, Ray Jackson, the only character from the original movie in the sequel, instantly befriends Alex and gets him a ticket.
I made someone a promise. I heard you can help me.
I got a deal for you. You want to keep your invitation? All you got to do is whip Cardo here. You ready? Let's go.
How did you obtain this?
He earned it.
The fighting in this movie is quite decent, and there's a wider variety of styles, but the fighters themselves lack the iconic qualities of those in the first movie. There's one, though, who's basically a ripoff from the rather politically incorrect Monkey Man from the first. This time he's Asian, but they decided to add monkey sound effects and to overdo the primate-like gestures, but he doesn't fare as well as the original counterpart. Speaking of animal-themed fighters, there's this guy who has tiger sound effects and claws people, and if you thought that was absurd, you haven't seen the transvestite luchador. Anyway, as if Ray Jackson wasn't enough as a buddy character, there's 3 fighters who classify as good guys. There's Sergio, a self-proclaimed street fighter, Kim, the first female participant in the Kumite, and also Jackson's love interest, which provides the basis for some really cringe-worthy scenes. And finally there's Cliff, who's defeated by Alex and somehow instantly recovers from his knockout to confirm the fact that they're still friends. You know, just in case you didn't know, Alex is now a full-blown good guy. Because the sword storyline needs to be resolved, Alex meets the guy who double-crossed him in the beginning and regains the sword with the help of his newly formed League of Justice.
Goodbye, Jack. Goodbye, Alex.
Mr. Miyagi rewards Alex by getting soon out of prison, and so the only thing that needs to be settled is the final confrontation between Alex and Demon. But first, the semi-finals. Let's take a look at how Bloodsport II blatantly pays homage to the first movie.
You are next.
You and me, and soon, just me.
Wow. Anyway, the final confrontation is nowhere near as epic as the fight between Dukes and Chong Li. It's adequate, I guess. Oh, and of course, there's the flashbacks to the training montage when Alex is getting his ass kicked, just like in the first movie. Alex finds his inner strength again and kicks the shit out of Demon. All's well that ends well. So, in summary, the plot is basically lifted from the first one as a whole with a nonsensical frame story added to it. The mentor and training montage pale in comparison to that of the first one. There's no instantly classic quotes, a distinct lack of blood despite the fucking title of this movie being Bloodsport, forgettable two-dimensional characters, shitty and barely present music compared to the original's upbeat 80s soundtrack, and a villain who doesn't even come close to Chong Li's level. The only redeeming factor is the fighting, which is decent, but that still doesn't save this movie from being quintessential bargain bin material.